So as promised, it's time for a Shop Talk segment. We have joining us Josh Olson, who's an American Oscar-nominated screenwriter and podcaster, known for writing the 2005 film A History of Violence. The film's been described as one of the greatest films of the 2000s and has been named on various greatest of all-time lists. You can find A History of Violence right now at deep discount. It's just released and just been released as part of the Criterion Collection. Josh, welcome to the focus group. He's holding up the film. Mox.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Sure. So for those who don't know, A History of Violence began as a graphic novel. And John and I, before the interview, had a lot of questions about how the film came about, whether you wrote this on spec or was this a favorite graphic novel of yours, or did a studio contact you? How did the film come about?
Yeah, well, I don't want to spoil too much because there's actually a great interview. There's about an hour, 45-minute long video interview with me conducted by my friend Tom Bernardo, who's the head writer on Bosch, and we talk a lot about that. But the shortest version possible is, it was a studio assignment. They were looking for a writer for it, and they were just meeting with a bunch of writers, and I had just broken into the studio system, and it ended up being the very first job I got as a studio writer. I've been writing a lot of straight to video stuff before that.
So Josh, though, you knew the novel. You knew the novel well. You liked it.
Yeah, I had been. I had read it a long time ago. I had been intrigued by the title and the concept because I thought it was a great title and a great concept. And one of the executives at New Line, Cale Boyder, is the guy who brought me into pitch. Knew I had read it, and honestly, I was not. I was disappointed in the book because it didn't do what I had kind of wanted it to do. I felt like it had a really great premise that it didn't quite do as much with as could be done, and sort of didn't think about it again. But when the opportunity came up to go in and pitch, I was basically told I'm not getting the job. It's just like you're new in town essentially as a studio guy, and I want my guys at the studio to get to know you. So come on in. We're talking to a handful of A-list writers who are all close friends with the head of the studio. You're not getting the job. So come on in and just, dazzle them. They're just there mostly to kind of get to know you, but, pitch. Which gave me I was like, oh, okay, so it doesn't matter what I pitch. So I pitched the version of the story that I would have written had I been brilliant enough to come up with the title and the premise. And it turned out that they had some, I guess, similar issues with the book. And, the other people they were meeting with were basically doing sort of straight up adaptations, and I was the one who was kind of taking it into a whole different direction. So I sort of fell into it. And it was a really valuable lesson, as a writer going out for a job. You can only second guess the people you're meeting with so much.
Oh, true.
And honesty is the best policy. Just go in and be yourself, do yourself. Go like, this is the version I want to see. I can't try to, figure out what you guys want, and it'll go your way or it won't. But if you do the wrong thing, if you go in and pitch something you don't believe in, and then you end up somehow getting the job, you're really screwed then, because, what if you can't write that,
Josh, to follow up on, so there's a lot of luck, it sounds like. There's also a lot of I love the theme of being yourself. Tim has looked at some interviews you've done talking about this idea of being authentic, pitching what it's coming from the heart. But when a director is assigned or picks up a script and talent is assigned to it, did you actually think about rewriting at all or adapting your screenplay to deal with Ed Harris, William Hurt, Viggo Mortensen?
We did. There was another draft. Basically, what happened is the one draft was written. The studio liked it, and they started going out looking for a director. And David, at the time, had just done a movie called Spider with Ray Fiennes, which is a great film. It is nobody's idea, I guarantee you. I don't think I've ever discussed it with him. I don't need to discuss it with him. Nobody went into making Spider going, this is the one. This is the one that will set me for life financially. This is my Star Wars. It's about a babbling schizophrenic walking around the worst parts of London talking to himself. And David had, they had scraped together the money for that, and I don't know if anybody got paid or they all got paid scale or something. So he wanted to get back into, I think he wanted to actually get paid to make a movie again. And I think he wanted to kind of get back in that game, because David has a ton of personal projects, many of which he made after this. And, the idea of going in and doing a studio film that did well would be very helpful for that. So he had just told his agents, bring me scripts. And we had just gone out to directors, the studio had. And so they came to him with the script for History, and he loved it. And came to L.A. to meet with them to stump for the job. And it was an interesting experience because, I remember, I talk about this in the interview, I will never forget, I know exactly where I was when I got the news that David Cronenberg wanted to direct my script. And then the double whammy of but he's probably not going to get the job. And you're going...
Which is just like you being told you could come in and pitch, but you're not going to get the job.
Yeah, kind of, and because all they were looking at, and look, this is their job. They know who he was. Nobody's sitting there thinking this is some nobody, but they're kind of going, oh, well, his last movie made $1 million, and and you're like, yeah, which is pretty good considering what it was. Nobody thought they were going to get Rich House Spider, and just I had a relationship with the people at the studio, so they were kind of telling me how the process was going and all the various people who were coming in to meet and what they were saying and what they were doing. And I had a relationship unbeknownst to them. I knew a woman who was, I think she was the number 2 agent handling David. And I would call her up on the QT and sort of pass along all the intel I had gathered from the studio. Because I was like, if there's anything I can do to help make this happen. And... so I'd just be sitting there going, wow, gosh, really? He came in and, I love that guy. Yeah, he's wonderful. I'd call him and go, they just met with John Nash. Okay, here's the thing. They really hate his last movie, but they think maybe there's a chance, blah, 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 blah. And she would use that information as needed. And then to their credit, finally, one of the things they did was they were like, well, let's watch Spider. That's the great thing about New Line is they're still, they're a little down and dirty and they actually care about movies. And they watched the film and it was like, oh, shit. He still got it. The old man's still an artist with a Thompson, and that was it. So then he got hired, and then he and I sat down and went through the script page by page and talked about it. And then I did another draft, and that was basically what got shot. And in the middle of that, trying to think, I think Ed. Yeah, I think Viggo came on in the middle of that. I don't think I found out about the others until after I finished the draft.
And he's the lead.
Yeah. Well, so we had another lead, and God, statute of limitations has got to be up. It was Nicolas Cage, who I absolutely love. He was one of the great actors of my generation, and is one of my favorite actors. And I would kill to work with him, and not the right guy for this project, I thought, primarily because the instant you see Nicolas Cage, for a fact he killed guys for the mob.
Yes.
When he goes, I never killed guys for the mob, you're like, dude, you're the greatest actor alive. I don't know that you can pull that off. But again, it would have been fine. And then what happened is his, I can't remember, what was the Lord of War? Is that it? He had a previous commitment to another film. And so he had to go do that. And History was basically green lit. So the ball was rolling. And in the middle of that, they brought in Viggo, which was truly incredible because when I was writing it, Viggo was one of the 2 actors I had in my head while I was writing it because
that was going to be one of our questions. Yeah,
he had been in a phenomenal Sean Penn movie. Sean Penn, by the way, was the other guy I had in my mind. But he'd been in a Sean Penn movie called Indian Runner. Mm-hmm. And he's phenomenal in it. And that was the movie that really put Viggo on my map. I mean, I'd seen him and stuff before. You're like, oh, that guy. But Indian Runner was the one where I was like, this guy's phenomenal. And then Lord of the Rings had come out, and now he was like essentially a movie star. So it was sort of like double whammy, timed out perfectly. Viggo read the script, hated it. And he had, it's funny, man. Time goes by. I've heard him. The story seems to have changed. But on the day, because I remember David going off to meet with him for breakfast when we were in the middle of working. And Viggo had big problems with the third act. And the third act of the thing was different only insofar as there was a lot more. It was a lot more action. There was sort of the assault on the house.
Also, Josh, the movie is sort of like a nested Russian doll in a way. The identity of the main character is switched to the viewer as time goes on, because you question whether he had the ability to kill someone as easily as he did, and how did that skill arrive. And then Ed Harris arrives and says, hey, I know who you are, and you belong. Hey, and he uses a different name. So his acting ability to hold all that secret identity in, by third act, he's actually acting on his previous identity.
Yeah. Yeah, and it just as written, the sort of big change in intent was in the first draft. He goes to visit the William Hurt character with the express purpose of killing him.
Who plays his brother, by the way.
Yeah. And in the so there was all this kind of like him parked in a truck down the street from the house, kind of like loading up for bear with weapons and everything. There's a world's greatest dad coffee mug, and then there's all this action, which is the worst stuff to have to write, because anytime you're writing an action scene, you know for a fact that by the time it ends up on camera, it's going to be so radically different, because you don't know what the sets look like, and then the stunt coordinator is going to come in and go, it'd be great if somebody dropped through that window, and blah, 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 blah. So it just feels moronic. I always hate it. I have people I know who used to write softcore porn, and they would write "sex goes here," and I was like, why can't we do that? Why can't we just go shootout goes here? James Bond survives, Dr. No dies, go nuts. Because no one's reading the script. No one's going, wait, on page 87 it says he shoots 2 guys and you've got 3. No one does that. It's ridiculous.
So Josh, it's been almost 20 years since it was released. And so what do you hear most often from fans of the film? Do they have is there one particular thing you hear most often about the film from fans?
I'll tell you my favorite. The funny thing is, over time, you sort of find out who the fan base is. And the people who responded the strongest to it over time as groups, there's 2 of them. One is kind of gangster rappers, and the other is sweet white-haired little old ladies. And I am not kidding you.
Those are 2 very different buckets of people.
Okay? It's very much so, yeah. And the film didn't initially do that well with women, and clearly the title, even those 2 minutes of violence in it, the title can be, I've always said we should have called it A History of Cuddling. And because women see the film,
the title is perfect because it taps into the tension throughout the entire film. Yeah,
but it also is alienating to half the audience. And but the thing that I take a lot of pride in is the fact is that for the most part, when women finally do see the film, they're like, "Oh my God, I loved it." My favorite all-time encounter, and I hope I don't think I told this on the disc or not, but running into a friend of mine at the airport, and he's there with his mother, who looks like somebody's grandmother from Central Casting, and introduces me and says, my friend Josh wrote the movie. Do you know the movie History of Violence? She goes, oh, I love that movie. And he goes, oh, well, Josh wrote it. And she looks at me and she goes, the staircase scene. And my friend just turns as red as any human being has ever turned in his life as his mother talks about the...
And she knew it.
If you were going to write did you ever look back at work overall and with a different eye, or if you were to write this movie now, would there be a different way? I know the film industry is in upheaval, but could you do it now, or how would it change? Or
I don't. I mean, certainly how I would write it. I like to think I'd write it a little bit better, perhaps, but not. I mean, I'm really proud of that script. It came out so much like what I had kind of pitched to them initially, right down to that ending, which I never thought they'd let us keep. And it spoke to me on some kind of primal level, and it was like, here's what the story needs to be. And I look at it now, and I can't. I've seen a ton of things I've worked on where you're like, oh, I should have done this, or they should have done this, or I screwed it up, or they screwed it up. And I look at this and I'm like literally nothing. If I have one small gripe with the film at all, and it's hilarious because nobody ever has a problem with this, and I'm the only one. It's also funny because like Viggo's issue was like the violence in the third act he thought was too much, and is they trained him with. I think it's like, was it Krav Maga? Is that the with this expert in this, this Israeli martial arts thing, so that when he get into the fights, he can do that stuff. And I was like, he's not he's not a Steven Seagal character. He was never a Steven Seagal character. He was like, essentially in my head, he was basically Robert De Niro in Mean Streets. He's just a guy who was a little bit nuts and had no aversion whatsoever to committing violence and killing people. But at no point was he this kind of like action star. And I still to this day, I'm waiting for someone to see the movie and like, you've done all this work laying out who he was in the past. You're like, why is that guy why does he know all these crazy martial arts? Those guys are just meatheads, you know? It's like they're Paulie Walnuts on The Sopranos isn't, going around dressed up like Bruce Lee and in Game of Death and, doing these amazing moves. He's just hitting people in the head with a club. I like that would be it. That would probably be the only thing.
You mentioned the final scene. Was that your idea, or because it seemed to leave people with a lot of questions, right? And so
yeah, that's from
your idea? Was that the
we show
studio?
My beat sheet. We show my pitch beat sheet in the interview. It was pretty amazing. It was very brief, and from the very beginning, I was like, I wanted to go out on that ending, and I was amazed when I got the job. And they give you their notes. They're like, here's, we loved your pitch. They had a couple things they wanted to change, a couple things they wanted to add here or there, whatever. And I kept waiting for someone to go and you got to come up with a different ending. And they never said anything. And then I wrote it into the first draft and nobody ever said anything. And then we wrote it into the last draft and nobody ever said anything. And then they let us film it. And I was like, I guess we got away with that. But it always felt like there was going to be this pressure to be, give it a happy ending or kill him in the end or something, and it never came. So
no, the ambiguity, is that the term I would use? There's a bit of ambiguity.
Sure.
It's almost like the last episode of The Sopranos where it goes black and you're like, okay, what continued? What happened? What were the emotions?
I have to say this. I haven't 100% confirmed it, but I've heard from two different people now who are involved with The Sopranos that it was an inspiration for that, and that blows my friggin' mind.
Almost like it was like, okay, it happened by accident. Yeah.
You're like, I'm out. That's it.
Yeah, that's the greatest thing ever. It was the greatest thing ever. And I remember, I love endings like that. I love those kind of stories over, boom, get out. And I remember watching, and there's somehow in most films when they do that in TV shows, I can feel it coming in a way. And I felt it coming in The Sopranos. I was like, oh my God, are they gonna shoot him in the head and cut to black? Or are they just gonna cut to black? And the thing went black, and everybody in the room I'm watching it with goes, what the hell? And I'm the one guy sitting there going, yes!
Yeah.
I love endings like that. And I'm so proud of our ending because it's art's a conversation with an audience. It's not a thing you do on your own. It's a thing that you put out in the world, and now it becomes something larger as people engage with it. And and for just pure mercenary reasons, leaving a movie with questions ensures that people will be talking about it as they walk out of the theater. And if you can
at the very least, but they're going to be thinking about it.
Right.
And I feel that way about a lot of my favorites. There's a doubt. There's a question mark. Is the character really, did they really transform through the hero's journey? Have they really, and I like that because that's life.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Doubt.
Well, it's so much fun too, because you get to engage with, now the work's done, the movie's out there, and you get to engage with an audience. You get to watch them enjoy it and feel it. And then, I get to do a lot of Q&As still. And I will never forget, there's a guy came up to me at a screening, and he seemed very anxious, and he was like, I need to know, like, is he a good man now? I know he did bad things in the past. Is he a good man? And I'm like, well, I don't know. That's kind of up to you. He's like, no, but what do you think? Is he a good man? And I see this woman standing about 10 feet back who's clearly sort of like keyed in on him, and she looks a little sort of annoyed. And I looked at him and I said, is that your wife? And he goes, yeah, it's my wife. I said, I think this is a conversation you need to have with her.
Wow. Yeah. Especially knowing the ending. Yeah. Hey, Josh, we're going to have to leave it there. I'm terribly sorry about that. Time is a terrible thief. But we've been talking to Josh Olson, who's the screenwriter for the amazing, let's see here, A History of Violence, a film that came out in 2005. Wikipedia claims it might have been one of the last films ever released on VHS by Hollywood before they went total DVD. The last
film released on VHS.
But do not let that deter you from the fact that it has an amazing cast. It has won all sorts of awards. It is a really beautiful, intense watch. I'll leave it at that. So Criterion is releasing it. You get it on deep discount. Josh, I want to thank you for being a guest. We could do this for I don't know, 5 hours. You have a podcast that you talk a lot on, so you're used to this. But thank you so much for joining us here on the Focus Group.
Thank you for having me.